Hi, this is Chris Smither with John Broughton on Retrospectives. This is Casey Radio 97.7 FM.
Okay, a nice gap between studio albums. It's been about 4 years since the last studio record. Were you getting quite eager about recording again?
Well, I was feeling guilty. My intention had been to put out the live record and then follow it very shortly with a studio record, but time just, it got away from me. I'm not quite certain how it happened, but I wound up spending about 2 years, writing the next record. And I write very slowly, but that's even long by my standards. But in the end, it didn't seem to have hurt anything. I'm quite pleased with the way this one came out.
For sure. I remember speaking to you in the past. You've mentioned how you prefer not to write unless there is an album project looming over you. Do you still believe that kind of pressure helps you get a better result?
Oh, I do. It was it was sort of I don't know how it quite escaped me, but for a long time it didn't occur to me that it had been quite that long. I think I kept fooling myself that it hadn't been that long since the last studio record. And then when the realization finally hit, I started working. But the result of it has been that I've already started working on material for the next record. So with any luck at all, it'll be my normal 20 to 24 month period in between this one and the next one.
So all the songs on this album that are yours, they all come from the period since the last one, or were there any left over?
No, there were none left over at all. There were there were a couple of starts that never got finished. That were left over that I couldn't seem to pursue, but it didn't matter. I had so many songs I wanted to do. I really wanted to do that cover of Desolation Row from Dylan. Mm-hmm. And that combined with the other three covers made for a pretty substantial record, so it didn't really bother me that much.
You had the luxury this time of doing the basic recording at your home studio. One would imagine that would be an enormous advantage for you.
It is, it's just in terms of the attitude and the mood of the recording. I mean, my personal belief is that I can hear it in this recording. I can really. It's very relaxed, there's a laid-back attitude to it, and also it sounds assured to me. If I can get out of my own skin and listen to it objectively, it sounds very, very assured, and that I think is a direct outgrowth of working in very familiar surroundings, not having to adapt your mental attitude to something that isn't really yours,
Yeah. Not to mention the economic benefits, too, of not having to watch the studio clock and...
Well, that's true, too. I mean, it has its own expenses. I mean, the gear that we were using was imported. I mean, I have gear in the house, but that's not really what we use. We brought in a bunch of high-end gear. I had an engineer living here at the house, so in a sense, the expenses were more or less the same. But... there was no clock to watch. It was just, one day, and the day was as long as you wanted to make it, really.
The change of producer this time around, did you feel that it was time for a change?
Yeah, I did, and so did Stephen Broughton. He, of course, produced the last three studio records, and when we finished, Drive You Home Again was the last one that I did with Stephen, and I told him then, I said, I think I'm going to try somebody else for the next one, and he said, yep, I think that's probably a good idea. You get to the point where you start running out of ideas, and you risk repeating yourself. I kind of look at producers, at least insofar as a producer working with somebody like me. I think of myself as, basically a chunk of turquoise or some kind of a stone that somebody's. And then the producer is a jeweler. Now you get one jeweler and he's going to put it in one kind of a setting, and another one will put it in a different kind. And it's the same stone, but it can come out looking, considerably different depending on what the setting is. And that's more or less the way I look at producers. And it was time for a new ring,
So through your albums with Stephen, you were starting to feel a bit of a sameness through those albums?
No, I wasn't, but I was afraid that we were gonna. It was just time to try something new. There was a sameness in that I was working with the same rhythm section and the same sort of basic ideas. I think it progressed a great deal. The advantage of working with Stephen at that point was that the band that he was using, they were very young and they were growing very fast, and so every record that I did with them, they had learned a whole bunch of new stuff. I just thought it was time to quit while we were ahead.
Sure. Did you go through much of a selection process looking for a new producer?
Well, I did. I had any number of ideas, and a lot of people expressed some interest, and then I wound up going with David Goodrich, and this is actually, David Goodrich is far and away his biggest project to date. He's fairly young, he's about 35, but I've known him for some time, and he used to come over to the house just to sit around and play, and I would listen to tapes that we had done together, just, tapes that I'd had running while we were playing in the house, and I just, I loved his ideas, and then out of a clear blue sky, one day he called me and he says, I know you've got a lot of people you're thinking about having produced, and they're all really good, but I just want you to know that in my opinion, I'm the guy that should produce your next record. And I said, all right, and let me think about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea. For one thing, he had definite ideas. It wasn't, and he was very familiar with the material because he'd sort of been in on it from the ground up. He would come over and say, "What are you working on?" So he'd been listening to the songs for almost a year. By the time we actually got into the studio, and he had very definite ideas, and that's basically my major criterion for a producer. Not so much what he's going to do, but does he have a coherent idea of what he wants to do that can carry us through from beginning to end, and he had it.
What would be some of the major differences in the way he approached the recording as to how Stephen would in the past?
Well, for one thing, I think this is the most successful at doing a produced album of somebody who is essentially a solo artist, in maintaining the integrity of the solo performances, but expanding the ambience around it in using production. I mean, the whole idea of recording the tracks live at home, just solo, and then adding the stuff, it was novel to me, and it's also something that I don't think I could have done as little as 5 years ago, because I don't think that my time would have been up to the task, because we didn't even use a click track on this recording, and yet all of the time was really locked in tight. We had no problem at all putting percussion on it. But and another difference is that David Goody we call him, is basically a subtractive kind of producer, and Stephen was an additive producer. Stephen would add stuff until he thought he had what he wanted, and with Goody, when it came to production, we took these live tapes into the studio, and we started to work on them, and we put an incredible number of tracks down, and then we just started peeling them away like layers of an onion until we got down to what it was supposed to sound like. And I think in the end, it comes up sounding simpler that way. It's counterintuitive to say so, but I really think that was the case.
How important is sequencing an album to you, getting the tracks in the right order in this day of CDs where people can just program them in any order they want anyway? Do you still pay a lot of attention to that?
Well, the whole process of sequencing this record took about 3 hours. And the way we do it is, we write down all the titles on strips of paper, about an inch wide and 6 inches long, and we put the title and we put the key that they're in, and a notation about tempo. And then we set them up on the piano bench in the studio while we're doing other things. And everybody walks around, and somebody will walk by and get an idea, and we'll shift the order.
Okay.
And then somebody else will come by and say, "Oh, no, that sucks. You can't do that." And then they'll shift it again. And after about 3 hours, we had one that everybody liked. And we looked at it and said, "That's good. That's a good one," And it's just, they're all musicians, and they all think of it as a set, as something that'll move from beginning to end. But, having said that, and I have done this with every record I've made ever since CDs came out, I can take the CD and put it in the CD player and hit shuffle, and I always like the way it comes out. It sounds just as good to me.
Yeah. Now, of all the covers on the album, you mentioned it briefly earlier, there's an amazing cover of Bob Dylan's Desolation Row.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how that arrangement came together?
That was Goody. Goody really had the idea. I told him I wanted to do the song, and I didn't really have any big ideas about what sort of production to do on it. He listened to it, he took it home, and he called me up. Lord, I think it must have been after midnight anyway, and he said, "This is it." And I said, "What do you mean this is it?" He says, "This is our big production piece." And I said, "You think so?" And he says, "Oh yeah." He says, "I got the whole thing thought out." I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" He says, "Well, it's what you have to do." He says, "You got to call Bonnie and tell her you need her on this." And I said, "Well, how do you want to do it?" And he says, "Well, listen, I'll come over in the morning and I'll map the whole thing out for you." And he came over and he said, "We're going to have horns. The whole thing is going to build. It's going to start off with you solo, and we're going to build up. We're going to have like almost a Salvation Army band sound in the background. I want Bonnie on these harmonies, and I can hear the slide part, and here and here." And so I thought about it, and I'm not in the business of second guessing my producer once I've hired him, But I could hear it, I really could. And in a way, I've resisted ever asking Bonnie to do anything, although she's offered any number of times. But I was always looking for something that would. I wanted it to make musical sense. I didn't want to use her for marquee value. Mm-hmm. And but I thought that made sense, and I gave her a call, and she said, "Send me this stuff. I got to hear it." So I sent it out to her, and she sent us back. The whole thing was done coast to coast. I mean, she was in San Francisco and I was in Boston. But I sent her out, files that they could put up on Pro Tools out there. And she sent us back about, I think for every guitar break there were 3 different tracks. For every vocal thing there were at least 3 different tracks. And, we put it up on Pro Tools on our end and just mixed and matched until we got what we wanted. But, basically, she put a lot of work into it, and it came out more or less the way I had anticipated it would. I'd heard her she had recorded a version of "It's All Over Now, Baby Blue," and her approach to Dylan lyrics is very similar to mine. And I was pretty sure that it was going to work out just the way it did, and sure enough, it's very intimate. It sounds, there's an intimate feel to it. It makes it sound like she and I have been living together for about 20 years. It's all to the good. I was extremely pleased, and so was she.
Of all the songs in Dylan's catalogue, it's not one that many people have been brave enough to take on. Is it? Well,
it's iconic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, it's sort of definitive, and, you're right. I've never heard another cover, and I think there are only about 2 or 3 that have ever been done. But I thought I had an angle on it, that wasn't covered, either in the original, because it's from his younger period. He was like 23 when he wrote that, and his version is he's very angry,
Yeah.
And I heard the whole thing and envisioned it in a much more sort of, there's an attitude of acceptance about it, in the way that I do it that is reflective, more than anything of the age that I am, and the way I look at things. It's just a whole different attitude, and I thought it was a significant enough difference to make it a worthwhile effort. So.
You've also covered a song by an artist who you've often spoken of as a major influence, Mississippi John Hurt.
Oh yeah, that wasn't much of a problem. I'd recorded a version of his Frankie and Albert on an album called Avalon Blues. It was a collection, a tribute to John Hurt that Peter Case put together, and the response to that was so positive from all corners that I thought, well, I better do another one. And of course, it was very much in my interest to do it. I mean, I really wanted to do it. I always wondered how much people would identify with it and be willing to give that sort of thing a chance. And I was needlessly cautious about it in the past because the response was really overwhelming. And it is to this too. People really like that cut.
There's also a lesser-known song from the Buffalo Springfield days, a Richie Furay song.
Yeah, that came about very late one night. I mean, we'd basically finished recording everything, and we were sitting around 11 or 12 o'clock in the evening, and Goody said, play me something that you haven't played in a long time. I want to hear something really sweet and something you haven't touched for years. Just see what you got. And I came up with that, and he'd never heard it. He's only 35, and he says, "Where on earth did you get that?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, we got to have that. We got to have it." So that was how that one came about. And then the other cover, Crocodile Man, is Dave Carter, who died just a year and a half ago. Wonderful songwriter. And I was involved in I was playing a festival in upstate New York shortly after he died, and he was supposed to play that festival, and during the hour that he was supposed to play, a great number of the musicians at the festival all got up and played a Dave Carter song, and I didn't really know any Dave Carter songs, but I spent about 3 hours that morning putting one together, that one, and again, the response was so overwhelming, I thought, well, if I can do that in 3 hours, maybe I should put some work into it.
Speaking of that track, Crocodile Man, now, I have to pardon my ignorance here, but you're listed on the album as Goat Toes, playing Goat Toes. Yeah.
If you listen to the track, you'll hear a kind of rattling percussion come in later, and those are actually rattles that go around your ankles.
Okay.
That are made of goat toes, of little goat hooves, goat trotters, and they rattle and give a very distinctive sound. But
I'm glad I know that now.
Yeah.
Now, I gather you would have road tested quite a few of these songs in a live situation before you went into the studio to record them. You primarily play solo. Are you hearing studio arrangements in your head when you were playing these songs live before you actually go in to record them?
No, I wasn't. That's why I need a producer, because I don't really hear those sort of things. Now that they've been done, I can hear the arrangements when I play them.
Uh-huh.
But if I put my mind to it, I can hear it. It's not something that interferes with what I'm doing, really. But no, I really don't. I don't have any idea. I mean, I would be inclined to produce myself if I could hear those things myself, but I don't really.
Now, I assume when you'll be down here in the new year, you'll be touring solo again?
That's right.
Yeah. Do you have a expanded lineup at all when you're touring around the States?
Well, Goody Goodrich works with Peter Mulvey, who's a good friend of mine, is managed by the same people that manage me, and they do a lot of support for me. On this tour, they're doing quite a bit of support, probably 15 dates or so. And we have about a half a dozen songs that the three of us do together. And so they do their set, and then I play mine. And when I get towards the end of it, I call them up, and we've been doing it. And it's pretty wonderful. It's probably the best ensemble playing I've ever done. And that's coming from somebody who's done very little, and so I don't have a lot to compare it with. But it's been going over very well with the audiences, and I enjoy it a great deal.
Now, I think just when you're scheduled to be down here, Chris, it's March, isn't it?
Late February and through March, yeah.
Late February and through March. Did you know Bonnie was going to be down here in February?
No, I didn't.
Oh, there you go.
I got to call her up.
Yeah, hopefully your paths will cross, yeah.
When is she going to be there?
I'm not. All I know at the moment, she's doing a festival here in February, and I assume she'll follow that up with a tour as well. So maybe you might overlap, yeah.
I should call her and ask her. I'm coming over. I think I don't get there until the last week of February, but
okay.
But it sure would be nice to hook up with her.
So I guess you'll be doing the festival circuit as usual.
You know what? I don't have a clue as to what the schedule looks like. I asked management about that, and they said, we have a really good tour lined up for you. It's shaping up really well. And that's the last I've heard about it. I don't know a thing. But that's not extraordinary. I often don't know what I'm doing until about 2 weeks out. So
yeah. It is an enormously busy schedule you keep touring. Did you manage to get much time to write when you're on the road, or you just keep the ideas in store until you take time off the road?
Well, I get the starts on the road. They come in little bursts, and I carry a mini disc recorder with me to make notes, and the ideas have some form. But usually it takes a dedicated session, a whole series of dedicated sessions to actually pull them together, and I have to make time for it, and it's something that's usually best done at home.
And what's happening for you between now and the time you get down here?
Well, there's a whole. Let's see. I'm actually at home right now on the East Coast, and I'm doing a couple of weeks worth of things, a couple of big concerts right here in my hometown. 2 nights at a theater here. It's about 600-seat theater. And then starting in November, first week in November, I guess, I head out west, and I do Colorado, California, New Mexico, and let's see, I think it works back down through the south a little bit, maybe some Florida. It's pretty hard work right up to Christmas. And then there's about 2 weeks off in Christmas where my wife and I are going to Hawaii, and we were going to hide and not bring a telephone or anything.
Lovely.
and then right after the new year, it starts up again, and before I know it, I'll be on my way to Oz.
You'll be down with us, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Chris. Look, thanks for taking time out to catch up with us again. Great to speak to you again.
Oh, it's a pleasure, John.
Congratulations on the new album. It's been 4 years, but well worth the wait. And we're looking forward to hearing.
To hear that.
Looking forward to hearing the material live.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Chris. We'll see you in the new year.
Bye-bye.
Take care.